Hi, this is KCCK's Culture Crawl. I'm Dennis Green, and Tim Hankewich from Orchestra, Iowa, is back after an exciting journey. We've got so much to talk about because you've got a huge concert coming up,
Sure, yes.
Beethoven 250. But before we do that, I have to ask about Antarctica because you spent January, you summered in Antarctica.
Yeah, people always tell me you should, in the winter you should go south. I took it to heart and just kept going, and we ended up in the Antarctic, and it was one of the most emotional and transformative experiences I have ever had. To touch land where no one else has ever set foot, knowing that I am amongst the less than 1% of the people in the history of this globe ever to have set foot on that continent, and it was like being your own, having your own starring role in a National Geographic documentary, just to seeing all the great wildlife, the penguins and the whales and the seals and all the sea life and the birds. It was truly overwhelming, so that by the time we were coming back, my wife and I really, truly got emotional because all those experiences sort of caught up to you and hit you all at once towards the very end. I would recommend it to anybody, and it is also probably the last great frontier and the last great, truly pristine area in the world that needs to be protected.
We, of course, think of penguins when we think of the South Pole.
Correct.
But we also think of it as being, very desolate, and here you're talking about how it's teeming with life.
Well, my next-door neighbor, Cam Campbell, who went with us, he had a great saying that it is a continent of contradictions. Here we are where it's cold, and yet there's also volcanic activity there. It's dry, but yet there's ice everywhere. You've got birds that can't fly. It's just this continent of contradictions, and yet, despite the barrenness of it, it's such a wildlife refuge because underneath that ice, so much life is happening. So it was. It's something that I will take to my grave as one of the most significant moments of my life.
You went during the summer.
Yes.
During the South Pole summer. So what was the weather like?
Yeah, I'm happy to say it was warmer than it was here. I even packed my tails with me, and yes, I did actually get a few pictures of me in my penguin suit amongst a penguin colony. So
spoilers for a future Orchestra Iowa commercial here.
You just know you're going to see it. You're going to see it probably for the next 3 or 4 years. Yeah, I'm very proud of that.
So you conducting a group of penguins?
Yeah, and they are totally unimpressed.
Well, I'm glad you had a good time. Glad you got back
Made it
safely
safe and sound, yes.
and everything. Do you think you might go back?
There's so many places in the world.
Yeah.
Yes, I would. I would go back. I'm also a Shackleton fan, and for those of you who don't know the Shackleton story, he was a British explorer in the early 20th century who tried to make it to the Antarctica, and his ship got crushed and sank, and yet he was able to rescue his entire crew. It's one of the most amazing, real, true life adventure stories, and it all happened also in the same area. So I would love to go back and see all those sites.
Well, you have a concert. You have to come back and do a concert.
Yeah, I guess re-entry. Here we go.
So what he would like to do is do a travelogue of his experience at the Paramount Theater this Friday and Saturday night and show pictures.
That's right.
But the audience is probably showing up to hear Beethoven.
Yes. So on December 17th, Beethoven turned 250. So we're starting to celebrate his music. So for the next year, you're going to hear a little bit of Beethoven this season and a whole lot of it at the beginning of next season in honor of one of the greatest composers to have ever lived. But I'm also going to still tie this up to Antarctic because everything in my recent experience has been about landscape. And the other two pieces on the program that we're performing is one by Sibelius, a violin concerto, and Sibelius has always been credited as being able to insert the ethos of his landscape in his music. We're also beginning a piece by an fairly unknown composer by our standards, a Polish composer named Andrzej Ponufnik, who in the 1960s was trying to do the same. And, of course, the piece that he wrote is called Landscape. So it, too, is a very sort of icy kind of music. So it's perfect for Iowa in February. It's a great segue from the Antarctic. So just think like gray Baltic music, and that's what we have.
Tell me about the Beethoven concerto that you're going to be performing.
So the Beethoven Symphony is the 7th Symphony, and by Beethoven's own recollection, that was Beethoven's favorite symphony. It debuted in 1813. Historically, what was happening at the time is Napoleon had just been defeated outside the gates of Moscow and was retreating back into France. And one of the last great battles, the Battle of Hanau, had just happened. And that was the last battle before it was sort of a retreating maneuver for the French army to get back into France. And so this symphony, the concert that debuted this symphony, was in honor of the fallen soldiers. And indeed, the most popular and the most famous moment of this entire symphony is the second movement, which is kind of this mournful funereal piece. But it was often even extracted from the symphony and just played on its own because it became so popular. Yours truly, this is my favorite symphony because when you start at the beginning and the very end, it just erupts with joy and enthusiasm and optimism. And I think that's a great way to ring in the new year.
Who's your guest artist?
Bella Hristova. Oh, my goodness. Holy cow, is she great. She is a Russian violinist. I had a chance to do this very piece, the Sibelius Violin Concerto, with her as a guest conductor last year in West Virginia. So I've been trying to get her as a soloist here for a couple of years. And her agency, to get to her, offered us a cellist last year by the name of Zlatomir Fung. Who
was spectacular.
Spectacular, and ended up winning the Tchaikovsky competition a couple weeks after we performed with him. So he was used as leverage to get to her. So that
kind of a win-win for Orchestra Iowa.
That just goes to show you how great she is. And having the benefit of performing this piece with her already, I'm kind of giddy inside because I know what's coming. She is remarkable.
And I know there's another guest with the orchestra, and that is a very cool Cedar Rapids story that you reminded me of.
Great human interest story. Prior to my arrival in Cedar Rapids, there was a consortium of philanthropists and physicians led by Bob Casimir. I think the short part, to make the long story short, a bunch of them went to Russia, and during their tours there, they discovered this young girl who was just a really amazing talent in need of some surgery. I think she had a soft palate that needed addressing. And so this consortium of Cedar Rapidian citizens brought her back to this country, and they got together and they fixed her soft palate. And they even went as far as supporting her education in Juilliard, and she became this incredible violinist. As a matter of fact, 12 years ago, the last time we did the Sibelius Violinist Concerto, this young girl, now woman, her name is Julia Sakharova, she was my soloist then.
When you did it
12 years ago.
Yeah.
12 years ago. And this year, I don't have a concertmaster, so I'm bringing in guests. So I just called her up and said, hey, Julia, what are you doing? You want to come in and play concertmaster? And she said, sure. So it is a major homecoming for her. It's interesting symmetry that she was our soloist on this piece 12 years ago. But to have her come to her home away from home in Cedar Rapids, where so many of this community invested in this little young girl who blossomed into this incredible professional. And I think it's the most powerful story of the entire concert.
It's Beethoven 250 plus the Sibelius Concerto that we've mentioned as well. And don't be surprised if Tim doesn't talk about Antarctica for maybe a minute or two. Certainly at the after party at Opus, yes. I'm sure we'll hear a lot about Antarctica.
I will answer the one question that's on everybody's mind. I have no idea what penguin tastes like. They frown upon that down there.
The concert is Friday the 1st or Friday the 31st and Saturday the 2nd.
Right.
Iowa City or Coralville on Friday, Paramount on Saturday.
Yes, correct. Right? And both concerts start at 7:30. We have a pre-concert presentation an hour before at both locations. For those of you who attend our performances at CCPA, we do a pre-concert discussion right across the street at West Music. They host they do a great job in hosting us, and it's a really great and informal way to sort of hear about the behind the scenes. About how these programs come together and what was on these composers' minds when they were writing these incredible works.
Yeah. So, I love the pre-concert talks. You really bring. Well, for those who don't get to hear this interview,
you can't compete with this interview. That's right.
It's a great way to get this kind of insight
Right.
about the music, which for me, knowing the story behind the music is, I mean, I love listening to music, but when I know the story behind it and a little bit
Absolutely.
more, it just increases my enjoyment by an order of magnitude.
Well, I'll go even one step forward. I think all music is a story that's being told or waiting to be told.
That's right.
Yeah. So
It's this weekend. It's Beethoven 250 with Orchestra Iowa. Tickets still available at
1-800-369-TUNE. It's so funny. It's been a while since I've had to use that information.
He has to remember the number.
1-800-369-TUNE. Or you can go online at artsiowa.org or artsiowa.com or orchestraiowa.org.
Tim, thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
You can hear the Culture Crawl live on the radio most weekdays at 10:20 or download the podcast, watch or listen on your own schedule at kcck.org/culture or using your favorite podcast catcher. I'm Dennis Green, and I'll talk to you later.